The applause came again, stronger than before. Passengers stood. Emma Brooks wiped at her eyes. David Cole raised his phone, not to record, but to salute. Michael Ross mouthed a quiet thank you. Grace turned toward the jet bridge, the path clearing for her, as if by instinct. The sound of clapping followed her, echoing off the walls, growing louder until it drowned out the loudspeakers overhead. At the threshold, she stopped once more and looked back. The entire terminal was still recording. Lauren Hayes sat behind her darkened monitor, motionless. The two officers stared at the floor. Grace's voice carried clear and calm. "Power isn't proven by who can shout the loudest," she said. "It's proven by who can stand, unshaken, when shouted at." Her eyes swept across the crowd, at the witnesses, the cameras, the truth. "Today," she said, "you saw that silence can do what force never could. It can end tyranny, one heartbeat at a time." And with that, Grace Turner walked through the gate. Behind her, the airline systems blinked red with loss reports and internal alerts. The crowd broke into thunderous applause that rolled through the terminal like a storm finding its freedom. What began as humiliation had become something else entirely, a public reckoning that would ripple far beyond Gate B7, long after the sound of her footsteps faded. Both officers' radios crackled at once, then emitted a sharp, metallic denial tone. Their screens blinked red, access revoked. The color drained from their faces. Officer Reed tried to reset his unit, tapping the side as if it might correct itself. Officer Miller checked his badge display, but the same word glared back, locked. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Someone shouted, "She just shut them down live." Another voice followed, "Their badges aren't working. Look at that." Phones tilted higher, capturing the exact moment power shifted. Behind the counter, Lauren Hayes lunged for her keyboard, slamming the keys as if sheer force might undo what had been set in motion. "No," she stammered. "No, no, this system must be wrong." But the screen before her only blinked a single, merciless word in red: revoked. The hum of the terminal faded beneath the sound of cameras recording. Officer Reed stepped forward, his voice breaking through the tension. "You can't just. This isn't your authority." Grace Turner's gaze cut toward him, cool and precise. "Authority," she said, "is not what you wear. It's what you earn. And you lost it the moment you decided to treat me as less than human." The words struck like a verdict. Officer Reed's shoulders sank. Officer Miller lowered his eyes. Their uniforms, once armor, now looked like hollow costumes. Around them, the passengers broke into scattered applause that grew louder by the second. Emma Brooks, the young trainee who had defended Grace earlier, whispered under her breath, "Real justice." Finally, her voice trembled, but not from fear, from awe. Grace walked forward. Each click of her heels against the tile echoed through the gate like a gavel. She stopped at the counter where her torn boarding pass still lay in jagged scraps. She didn't kneel. She didn't flinch. Her voice was calm, sharp enough to slice through the air. "You tried to erase me with a piece of paper," she said. "But I'm not paper. I don't tear." The applause surged again, thunder rolling through Gate B7. Lauren Hayes sat frozen, fingers trembling over the keyboard. Her authority, her posture, even her voice, all gone. The officers stood like statues stripped of meaning. Grace turned to the crowd. Dozens of cameras pointed her way now, not because she sought attention, but because the truth had demanded witnesses. "You all saw it," she said, her tone firm, deliberate. "They dragged me down not because of what I did, but because of what they assumed I wasn't. They called it policy. But prejudice has no policy. It only has excuses." David Cole, the frequent flyer who had defended her earlier, nodded in quiet solidarity. A few rows away, Michael Ross held his toddler close, his voice low but full of conviction. "That's what integrity looks like, kiddo. Remember this." Grace's phone chimed once. She lifted it, her tone steady. "Rachel," she said into the receiver, "complete the withdrawal. $4.9 billion leaves the account, effective immediately." The air cracked with disbelief. Someone gasped. "Did she just say billion?" Another voice from the crowd muttered, "She's pulling her entire investment. She actually owns part of the airline." Lauren's eyes widened. You can't do that," she stuttered, gripping the counter as if it might keep her from sinking. Grace's reply was quiet, but unshakable. "You did it to yourselves." Her phone buzzed again. Transfer confirmed, the voice on the other end said. All holdings have been pulled. Phones caught every word, every flicker of panic on the staff's faces. The crowd knew this wasn't just an argument at a gate anymore. It was a collapse, a corporate reckoning happening in real time. Grace lowered her phone. She turned her gaze to one of the recording passengers, her words measured like law. You try to make me disappear, she said. But I don't vanish. I build. I endure. I rewrite. Lauren's terminal went black. Her ID badge vibrated once, then went dim. The officers' radios emitted another short tone, a system notice confirming their suspension. Officer Reed set his device down slowly, shame overtaking defiance. Officer Miller whispered, "It's over." Grace bent only once, to retrieve her passport from the floor. She brushed the dust from its cover, then tucked it neatly into her bag. Her movements were graceful, deliberate, unshaken. Every motion said what words no longer needed to. Dignity does not bow. She paid for her seat. You can't do that to her. This is discrimination. Phones lifted higher. The once passive passengers were now a wall of defiance. Officer Miller tossed the passport back onto the floor with deliberate contempt. Trash, he muttered. The sound of it hitting tile echoed louder than the boarding calls. Grace's eyes followed it, steady and unflinching. For a moment, memory clawed up. The day she was 26, standing in a bank while a teller scrutinized every check she'd earned. The doubt had sounded the same then. She straightened her shoulders. Her voice carried steel. You're not destroying my name, she said. You're destroying your own institution with every word you speak. Lauren laughed, the sound brittle and empty. Big words for someone who won't even make it onto this plane. She spun toward the officers. Cuff her. Now. Reed hesitated, but Miller obeyed. The metallic click of handcuffs leaving his belt filled the air like a countdown. A woman shouted from the crowd. She hasn't raised her voice once. She hasn't broken a rule. Why are you treating her like a criminal? The dam broke. Passengers stood. Cameras flashed. The murmurs turned to outrage. The air at gate C-12 thickened with heat and disbelief. Grace didn't move, didn't shout, didn't blink. She was the only still thing in the storm. Then she spoke quietly into her phone. Rachel, she said, activate Protocol 7. The words were calm, surgical. A woman's voice answered crisply through the receiver. Understood. Initiating Protocol 7. Confirm escalation? Confirmed, Grace said. The sound of her voice, so composed, landed heavier than any shout. Officer Reed froze mid-motion, the cuffs hanging loosely in his hand. Lauren frowned. Who are you calling? That won't save you. Grace finally looked up, her eyes sharp as glass. It's not about saving me, she said. It's about saving your airline from itself. Though it might already be too late. The crowd stirred. A young man whispered into his live stream. She just said something about a protocol. This isn't normal. Lauren forced a laugh that broke halfway through. Nice act. You don't scare anyone. Security, finish it. But the officers didn't move. Their radios crackled at once. A burst of static, followed by an alert. Notice, investor-level audit protocol engaged. Immediate hold on staff actions pending verification. Miller blinked. What is that? Grace's mouth curved just slightly. It means your next move will be recorded at the highest level of your company. And that what you say now will live in your permanent files. A wave of murmurs spread through the gate. She sounds like she owns the place, someone whispered. Maybe she does, another replied. Lauren's face drained of color. You're bluffing, she said. This airline answers to shareholders, not passengers. Grace's tone sharpened to a blade. Exactly. The silence that followed felt alive, thick, electric, undeniable. Reed slowly lowered the cuffs. Miller took a step back. The crowd leaned in, phone steady, eyes wide. Grace rose from her seat, unhurried, her every movement deliberate. The hum of the terminal seemed to fade. I am not a stowaway, she said. Not a fraud. Not your stereotype to drag out like a warning sign. I am the largest private investor in this airline. The words detonated through the room. Gasps broke out like thunderclaps. A woman near the gate whispered, "Oh my God." Lauren's composure shattered. You expect us to believe that? Grace took a step closer. Belief isn't required. Proof already exists in your system. Every executive in your chain of command is now watching. Every word you've said is being logged for legal review. Officer Reed's grip slackened. Officer Miller backed up another pace. A teenager filming from the corner whispered, "She's an investor. She owns part of this airline." Grace's eyes never left Lawrence. "I built companies while you doubted my name. I built power while you tore up my ticket. And today, your arrogance has met its reckoning." Lauren's last defense cracked. "You have no authority here." Grace didn't blink. Authority is temporary. Ownership is permanent. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the overhead announcements seemed to hold their breath. Emma Brooks covered her mouth, eyes wide. David Cole folded his arms, nodding once, vindicated. The passengers began clapping, not for drama, but for justice. Grace didn't smile. She didn't need to. The truth spoke for itself. Her phone chimed once. A calm voice came through the speaker. "Ms. Turner, escalation log complete. Do you wish to proceed with immediate action?" Grace raised the phone just enough for everyone to hear. "Yes. Effective immediately. Suspend the manager's credentials. Suspend both officers' access. Document everything and forward to legal." Within seconds, Lauren's badge buzzed against her hip, her terminal flashing red. The crowd's applause swelled, filling gate C-12 like a verdict. Grace Turner stood at the center of it all, calm, resolute, untouchable, while the airline that had tried to strip her dignity was forced to bow to the truth it could no longer deny. "Remove her now." The command hit the air like a hammer. Officer Reed and Officer Miller moved in sync, boots thudding against the tile. Reed grabbed for Grace Turner's arm, while Miller lunged for her carry-on. The crowd gasped as the bag tore open, spilling across the floor, a leather planner, a U.S. passport, and a slim black folder sliding to a stop near the counter. "Look at this," Lauren Hayes sneered, nudging the folder with her heel. "Nothing here proves who she says she is. Just scraps. Just lies." A ripple of disapproval spread through the gate. Someone muttered, "This isn't right." Another voice cut through, sharper. "You can't just throw someone's property on the floor." Still, the insults came. "She's dressed too plain," Officer Miller said under his breath, but not quietly enough. "Real first-class passengers don't travel like this." Always the same trick. The words sliced deep, but Grace didn't rise. She slowly folded her hands, sealing her composure like stone. Her voice, when it came, was soft enough to make people lean closer. "Every insult you throw isn't evidence. It's proof of your bias. That difference will matter more than you think." The silence that followed was suffocating. Then Emma Brooks, the young trainee attendant who had spoken before, stepped forward again, trembling but resolute. "She's right," she said. "I scanned her ticket. It was valid. You're targeting her because she doesn't look like your idea of first class." The air seemed to tilt. A few passengers began to clap quietly, others murmuring in agreement. Lauren's voice cracked as she tried to shout over the noise. "Enough. She's trespassing. She's a thief in disguise. Call airport police, now." But her voice carried fear now, not authority. Passengers were rising from their seats. Phones aimed not at Grace, but at the staff who had stripped her dignity. The tide had shifted, and Lauren Hayes could feel it. Grace inhaled deeply. She'd lived this scene before, different uniforms, different rooms, same contempt. But this time, she wasn't alone. The gate was no longer an airport checkpoint. It was a courtroom, and the verdict was being written in real time. The silence before the next move was sharp enough to cut through glass. The two officers squared their shoulders. Reed reached for Grace's arm again, while Miller bent toward the strap of her bag. Then, without thought, Miller snatched her passport from the floor and lifted it high like a trophy. "Probably stolen," he muttered. The gasp that followed was instant. Lauren seized the moment. "There it is. Fraudulent identification. Proof enough. Remove her at once." An older man in a pressed gray suit stepped into the aisle. David Cole. His voice carried the kind of authority that didn't need volume. "I saw her present that passport at check-in. I saw the scanner confirm her identity. You're twisting the truth in front of witnesses." Lauren glared, her face blotched with heat. "Sir, sit down or you'll be escorted out as well. This isn't your concern." But it was too late. Voices began rising all around. "Get her out of here. First class isn't for people like her." The words cracked through the air like a gunshot. Gate C-12 froze. The hum of rolling luggage and boarding announcements evaporated into silence. Two security officers closed in, gripping her arms as though she were smuggling danger instead of dignity. The woman in the emerald green dress didn't resist. She pressed her phone harder against her ear, her face calm, carved from control. Around her, whispers rose like a tide. Some passengers lifted their phones, recording without blinking. A manager in a tailored navy suit leaned against the counter, arms folded, smirking as though humiliation were part of the job description. The sign above glowed first-class boarding, but the air was thick with something colder, judgment. "Your ticket looks fake," the manager said, raising her voice so the watching crowd could hear. "We've seen this trick before. Print something online, walk in like you belong, hope no one checks." Her tone was acid, each word meant to sting. The woman, Grace Turner, stood still, her fingers white on the handle of her carry-on. Her boarding pass had scanned green. Her ID matched. But none of that seemed to matter. "She's holding us up," muttered a man in a crisp business suit. "Put her with the others and coach." Grace didn't flinch. She let the silence stretch until the discomfort began to turn toward her accusers. One of the officers tightened his grip. The other avoided her eyes. A young trainee attendant, barely out of training, stood frozen near the counter. She had seen the green scan light herself. She had seen the manager tear the pass. But fear locked her voice behind her teeth. "This is not your space," the manager snapped, stepping closer. "You don't belong in this cabin." Grace lifted her chin slightly, eyes steady, unbroken. She said nothing. The stillness unnerved them. Because silence, real silence, wasn't surrender, it was precision. And within the hour, that silence would cost the airline $4.7 billion. The boarding gate had become a stage. The audience restless. The actors untrained. "You're a fraud," the manager spat. "This isn't a city bus. People like you think a credit card makes you equal, but it doesn't." The words sliced through the crowd. A few passengers looked away, embarrassed to share the same air. Others recorded quietly, thumbs trembling. A father holding his toddler whispered, "Her pass scanned green." "I saw it." But his voice was too soft, swallowed by the tension. Grace breathed slowly. "Run my name," she said finally, her tone low but cutting. "If you believe I don't belong here, then run my name." The manager laughed, brittle and sharp. "You think that matters? I'm the authority here. Security, remove her." One officer grabbed her bag, throwing it onto the tile where it spun, and fell silent. The other tore her boarding pass in two and dumped it in the trash. The sound was loud, deliberate, like a verdict. The crowd stirred. Phones lifted higher. A young man spoke up, voice shaking but certain. "This is being recorded. Every second of it." The manager's composure cracked. "Turn that off. Now." But before the officers could move, a voice broke through the chaos. "I scanned her ticket." Everyone turned. The trainee attendant stepped forward, eyes wide but steady. It was valid. Her ID matched. "You tore it up." The confession fell into the silence like thunder. Grace turned her head just enough to meet the young woman's eyes. A faint nod. No words. Just gratitude. The crowd shifted. The authority in the room tilted. The power that had bullied her moments ago began to falter under the weight of witnesses. Another passenger stood, a middle-aged woman with a phone raised. "This is discrimination, and everyone here knows it." The manager's face blazed red. "You're out of line. You'll regret this." But the voices kept coming. A man near the window closed his laptop and said clearly, "I'm a platinum member. I saw her credentials. If she's a fraud, then so am I." The room erupted, not in chaos, but in conviction. For years, Grace Turner had faced the same performance under different lights: doubt, dismissal, disbelief. But this time, she had an audience. "Call whoever you want," Grace said, her voice calm again, deliberate. "Just make sure you remember every word you've said. Because when this is over, it won't be me you have to explain." Her voice carried, soft but absolute. And in that moment, the crowd no longer saw a suspect. They saw a symbol. The officers hesitated. The phone stayed lifted. The manager's confidence collapsed under the spotlight of truth. Grace didn't move, didn't gloat, didn't even blink. She simply stood, anchored, resolute, as the system that had tried to erase her finally began to see her. Outside, a departing jet roared down the runway, its sound echoing through the glass. Inside, a single truth had landed harder than any plane ever could.